Hello, I'm Marcus Railton, and this is the ScotsCare podcast. ScotsCare is the only charity dedicated to helping disadvantaged Scots in London through a range of support, including mental health therapy, financial grants, advocacy, sheltered housing for older Scots, job coaching, social events, befriending, and support for children and families. The charity's been running for 400 years to help break the cycle of poverty experienced by some Scots. In this series of the ScotsCare podcast, I'll be chatting to celebrities and supporters of the charity that have also forged a life in the capital away from home, and about the ups and downs that can bring. On the programme today is the comedian, writer and actor Eleanor Morton. Time Out has hailed her as a rising star, while The Guardian have called her charmingly whimsical. She's not afraid of being at the sharp end of comedy, having performed numerous times at the Edinburgh Festival and always to rave reviews. Her Twitter feed has over 120,000 subscribers, with her beautifully subtle comedy videos regularly attracting tens of thousands of views. It's a delight to be able to speak to her today.
ScotsCare.
Hi, Eleanor.
Hi.
Thanks for doing this.
That's all right. Thanks for having me.
Well, it's great to have you on the podcast. It's a kind of new thing for us. The thing I heard was that you've moved back to Edinburgh.
Yeah, sort of. Not really what the podcast is about, but yeah, I was in London for 8 years and I moved back on Monday.
What kind of drove that? Because I shouldn't say this out loud because I was born and brought up in Glasgow, but I do love Edinburgh.
That's all right. I mean, I think it always struck me as a really weird rivalry because I think they're such different cities that you can't really compare them. But yeah, I'd always wanted to live back in Edinburgh since I've never lived here as an adult. I've only lived here as a child, and I just really like it. I mean, if you like it, you get why. And also, my landlady was selling, so I kind of had to move.
Yeah. I like the fact that you can kind of walk about it. It feels you certainly can't park, but you can certainly walk about it, and it feels really comfortable.
Yeah, it's a nice compact city, and I'm lazy, so yeah, I like a place I can walk around in half an hour. You know.
Now let's get the elephant in the room out of the way, because I know I've watched a lot of your stuff, and you do mention the accent. You just don't sound. Why don't you sound Scottish?
It's a number of boring reasons. My parents are both my dad was brought up in London, so my parents are both brought up in England by Scottish families. So I've kind of got this unfair thing where I've got an accent that doesn't really kind of make any sense. But I mean, you know Edinburgh, you know it's full of English people anyway. So I think it's not as if I was surrounded by heavy accents to make me change mine. But yeah, it's not a very exciting story. It's just what happens with a lot of people, I think. You kind of families move up and down. So
where do you feel at home? Because you know what, I was having this conversation with my friend Debbie the other day, and she's a fellow Scot, and she lives in London. Yeah, and she said she goes home. She's from Buckie and Aberdeen.
Oh yeah,
and she says when I go home to Buckie, I love it, but I don't think I could be there anymore. And then when I come back to London, I love it, but I don't feel 100% English and a Londoner. Yeah. I'm kind of trapped in this kind of netherworld.
I know what she means. I think I did enjoy living in London, but I never felt it's such a massive place. It's hard to feel 100% at home there. But I think Edinburgh, definitely, that's kind of an easy choice for me because I just really like everything about Edinburgh. Well, not everything, obviously, but I think if you're from Buckie, it's you're going to have that's a real difference. London and Buckie are very different places, and also maybe
if you're from Buckie, you just deserve whatever you get, in my opinion.
But you know, once you've lived in London, it's going to be hard to go back to somewhere like that and kind of feel like you're still with everything that's happening, you know. Whereas Edinburgh's got a bit more going on. I think I can say that's not controversial if I say that Edinburgh's a bit more exciting than Buckie, is it?
I don't think anyone could argue with you. Yeah. When you said 8 years in London, when you first moved, was there a culture shock for you? Because I moved from Glasgow. I think I was 28 when I moved. I've been here 20 years, and I still remember one of the first days that I was sitting in a Pret a Manger. It was just off Wells Street in Soho, and I had bought
Oh
a
yeah.
copy. But this is so long ago. I was looking for a flat, and I bought a copy of Loot because you didn't go online then. You actually looked at a newspaper to find a flat.
Yeah.
And I bought a sandwich, and everything just seemed so fast and so crazy and so expensive, and I was
Yeah.
absolutely terrified.
Yeah, it was I'd not been to London until the first time I ever went was when I was 16 and I moved when I was 22, and I think because I'm from a very small city, it was just mad. I remember being on the tube and just being so overwhelmed by like how many people were there, how fast everything was, how everyone kind of, they want you to get out of their way. And then the other stuff was just weird, like I didn't expect. Like the opening hours really threw me off for a city that's meant to be like one of the major capitals of the world. They close at like 11 on a Saturday, and that was confusing. And also like a couple of shops I'd never seen before, and also being in the really fancy bits, just never having seen that much wealth and stuff was kind of weird. Like Edinburgh's got fancy bits, but they're not big enough that you kind of lose sight of anything, whereas in London you can go into like, I don't know, Chelsea or wherever all the designer shops are, and you kind of feel like this is mad, this is completely different.
Yeah, I know. There are moments
Yeah.
where you walk through Knightsbridge, and it's a different existence altogether, isn't it?
Yeah. And I also will say the levels of homelessness I think really threw me a bit. Like I was not I'd never lived anywhere before where there was that much, homelessness.
Yeah.
And it was quite, yeah, that was quite tricky, really difficult to look at.
Yeah, and do you know what? When I go back, I grew up in Glasgow, as I said, and I didn't
Yeah.
see that much. But see, when I go back to Glasgow now,
Yeah.
I see lots of homeless in Glasgow again,
Yeah.
which I don't know whether. No, I've not forgotten about it. It just wasn't there, and it's
Yeah.
kind of back with a vengeance, and
I
it's
think so. Yeah. Yeah.
terrifying.
Yeah. It was just getting used to everything. Really was, but it was also a real novelty of being in a place that you'd seen on TV and
Yeah, I get that. Yeah,
famous places that you've heard about that you actually get to go to. It was quite exciting because I'm really into history, so it was really cool to be in a place where all these things happened that you'd heard about.
ScotsCare, working to make London life better for Scots and their children.
Well, can I talk about your career and how you actually made this? Was there a kind of defining moment when you said to your mum and dad, I'm going to be a comedian, and they went, oh no, don't do that, because it's not an easy career choice to make.
No, it's definitely not. But I think my parents are pretty nice. They were kind of like, I think they were aware that if they didn't sort of support whatever I was doing, I would do it anyway, so they might as well be nice about it. But no, I think when I was like 14, 15, I always wanted to be a performer, and then I kind of got into comedy, stand up. People like Dylan Moran and Bill Bailey were quite big at that time. Yeah, and I just felt like it would really be something I wanted to try. And I do remember the first time I told my mum, I think she was a bit like, okay, like I don't think she pictured that something I'd be any good at or something I would enjoy doing. I think she thought it was quite a scary thing to do. So
I think it's a terrifying thing to do.
yeah, a lot of people do.
Yeah. See, do you know what? I was listening to a comedian, and it was Gilbert Gottfried, who passed away recently.
Yeah.
He was talking about material that you do.
Uh-huh.
And I thought, I get to ask Eleanor this.
Yeah.
And he was talking about you do material and you go in and he goes, and you kill, and it's brilliant and it does so well. And then you go on and you do the same jokes on a different venue the night after, and you just die. Have you ever had that?
Yeah, I mean, not constantly, but enough to know. I think all comedians do. They have, you might not like kill it one night and die the next, but you definitely get different levels of reaction, and it's kind of about like how much faith you have in your material.
Yeah.
If it always dies, you should probably stop doing it. But but if it
wisdom. If it's not funny, don't do it.
Yeah. If it generally does well, the audience are probably the ones who are in the wrong headspace that night. There's so many different reasons you can die. You can die because you're not funny, but you can die because like the room is a bit weird, or the audience are too drunk, or just lots of, or you're not what they were expecting.
Yeah.
So yeah, you've just got to go in and hope for the best, I suppose.
Do you think is it getting tougher? I read on social media a lot about woke comedy and things you can say and things you can't say. When you write new material, are you aware of, or how far can I push the envelope?
I suppose I've never really, the thing is, I think comedy, the important thing is it should be funny more than anything else. And if you're just there to shock people or upset them, I think, yeah, you get a reaction, but you've not really done your job. So I think I like what's funny or what I think is funny. And I'm not really an edgy comedian, so it's not like I've ever had to kind of go, oh, I hope this is I hope no one's going to get upset by this. But I think you can say, the thing is, you can make a joke about anything you want, absolutely anything you want. It all depends on how good you are at making jokes and how you frame it. Yeah. And I think there's a misconception that we can't say anything. I don't think that's true. I think it's more that you've got the freedom of speech to say whatever you want, and the audience have the freedom of speech to maybe not enjoy it. So no, I don't find it trickier, but I think we're rethinking how we do comedy and what it means to who the subjects are and things like that. And I think that's good. I think it's good to talk about that kind of stuff because it's always changing. It's the medium that dates the fastest. So yes. You've always got to make sure you're kind of trying something new.
I remember seeing, you mentioned Dylan Moran. I remember seeing Dylan Moran at the Edinburgh Festival in the 90s. And I think it was one of my kind of first experiences of going to see proper live stand-up. And I thought he was brilliant. I thought he's the best thing I've ever seen. But I think he has quite a dark sense of humor. And then onto that, I was talking to someone the other day who is a TV director for big live shows. And he had this theory that the more intense your job is, you tend to have a darker sense of humor, like nurses or firemen.
Oh, yeah.
Or
definitely.
Or sometimes comedians. And do you think that kind of lends itself to a dark sense of humor?
Yeah, I think I have a really dark sense of humor. I don't think I'm like an offensive or edgy comedian, but I think I enjoy. I think because I think also you've got a dark sense of humor. I'm quite an anxious person. I'm quite scared of the world, and I think humor is a way of me tackling that. So I like to kind of try and turn anything you can into. I think it's just it's a coping mechanism. It's like, as human beings, there is a point where you have to laugh at stuff because otherwise you kind of go a bit mad. And I totally think that I have friends who are doctors, and I have friends who have kind of jobs like that, and they absolutely have really dark sense of humor because you have to, otherwise it would be such a, you couldn't do the job, I don't think.
Yeah, and I think that's sometimes what makes really good comedians great comedians, is that they can see the dark, which seems kind of ironic that they can see the dark side of life, but that's what makes them funny.
Yeah, I think there's a kind of collective feeling when we can all laugh at something that we're all also struggling with. Maybe it really helps, like people deal with that kind of stuff, like during, I don't know, just trying to think, during the Second World War, there was lots of making fun of the enemy and stuff, and that was because people were also really scared and they didn't want to think about how scary everything was. So yeah, it makes sense.
And I think today we live in this, I've got 3 children, and I kind of worry about my children growing up in this society where everything, you have an Insta life, and what you see on Facebook doesn't actually reflect and it reflect reality, and everybody's perfect and all photos are photoshopped. And kind of what I liked about a lot of the stuff I watched about yours is you tap into the insecurities of life. And I think that's what the audience really reacts to. They kind of went, oh yeah, it's okay to fail or to not be perfect.
Yeah, I think so. I think the thing about comedy is it can't be too polished or perfect, because it's just not as fun. The nicer it looks, the less funny it is. And I think I do think I'm so glad I'm not a teenager today. I mean, being a teenager like 15 years ago was hard, but I can't imagine I don't know how old your kids are, but like, the social media that they are exposed to, and just this kind of pressure to be the best at everything, and the best version of yourself is crazy. So yeah, I guess you get to play around with that with comedy, because you're holding up a mirror to to that kind of stuff and saying, hey, it's not perfect, and it's kind of funny, isn't it, that it's not
And
perfect.
it's okay to be not perfect. And
Yeah.
I think one of the things you did is you were talking about trying stuff and not sticking at it. That really touched a nerve with me, because I want to be one of these people, because we're a member of a gym, which I just don't go to, and when I do go, I go once and then I go 3 months later, and I still see the same people and they're doing the same thing and they look fantastic, and I want to stick at stuff and can't. And I love the stuff that you were talking about that kind of smugness of people that do yoga, and that just I love that.
Well, I think there's a trend just now that it's called That Girl, and it's sort of a millennial trend where 20-something girls kind of post their whole perfect lives on social media, their breakfasts and their meditations and their workouts and everything. And it's just mad that we're totally expecting people. I think people do have a sense of achievement about those things. Not that it's bad, but it's also funny because we get so competitive about everything, and it's just because someone else is really good at the gym doesn't really have any reflection on any of us. But we have this obsession as a society where we're all kind of trying to outdo each other, and then obviously failing or lying to ourselves about it because it's hard.
Transparent, isn't it, these days? Because everything's online and everything's visible.
Well, yeah. It used to be like if you failed at your diet or whatever, no one needed to know. But now it's kind of like if you've been tracking your progress on Instagram or whatever, then there's so much more incentive, it's pressure to be perfect, and that's really scary, I think.
Yeah. And what I loved that you said, I actually laughed out loud at, was that you talk about achieving the same level of smugness through yoga by just carrying the rolled up mat around underneath your arm. And the phrase you used was it burrito of privilege? That is genius.
Thank you. Yeah, I like the. Well, I used to live in London. The last place I lived in was in Lavender Hill, which was a very yummy mummy place, and I just felt a bit. Just going out in my normal clothes to go to the shops felt like depressing, because everyone is very kind of upper middle class, yummy mummies. They've all got their workout gear on, lots of professionals, and it I stopped jogging because I just felt like I was doing it wrong because I wasn't as perfect as these people. So I get that. When I turn up to pick up my kids, it's like everybody looks like they've just ram-raided Sweaty Betty. Yeah, exactly.
And my kids turn out and and they've still got like porridge in their hair for the morning. And it's just...
it's I mean, that's the thing about London as well. It's got places like that you get in Scotland, but again, not on the same scale. So
and what I also like that you were talking about is just the ability to be stronger in yourself and still. And having principles, like you did this piece about meeting a racist woman on the train.
Oh yeah, that's right.
You really wanted to say that's not right. You can't say these things. I don't believe in that. You're completely out of order. But you ended up not really saying these things at all. Not agreeing with her, of course, but but not having the guts to or being too polite. Do you think? Is that what we are?
Yeah, and I also think in your head you always imagine what you'd be like in a situation like that. And you never live up to your own expectations, because often people aren't. She wasn't trying to be antagonistic or aggressive. She thought I was going to agree with her. So I think you can just be caught off guard. And also there is definitely a politeness there, where in Britain in general, I think we're all a bit awkward about everything. To the point where we kind of we'd rather sneak away. So I don't know. I mean, maybe if I met her again, it would be different, but I doubt that will happen.
Well, this is it. Yeah. What is it? The French have a phrase for that, don't they? They call it the spirit of the stairs. The spirit. What was it? Esprit.
Oh, yes. Yes.
It's the smart thing you thought of after you've left the room.
Exactly. Yeah. And we all have this idea of ourselves as, I'd say that or I'd do that, but actually most of the time you wouldn't. You'd run away.
Do you know what? I don't know what kind of person that makes you if you do say these things. I used to work with a guy, and he was very good at saying no. And you would say, Alan, do you want to do this? Or Alan, and you go, no, I'll tell you why. I'm not going to do that. And he'd be like, Alan, are you coming for a coffee? No, I don't want to come for a coffee. That's it. He'd tell you. He would tell you really still. So he'd be phenomenally blunt. And there was part of me that kind of envied it. But And there was another part where a lot of people just didn't like him because I think to a certain extent, you have to be polite in society, don't you?
Yeah, you do. And again, especially in Britain, we're very overly polite, and I think we especially get a bit freaked out when people are very blunt like that, even though it probably saves everyone a lot of time and effort, if people just say exactly what they think. Because I know quite a few people from, I know, not to generalize about Europeans, but most of the Europeans I've ever met are much clearer, they're much less into sort of pussyfooting around things. And I kind of like it, I think, because I personally am bad at confrontation or being, I'm trying to get better at, saying no and being good at that. But yeah, I definitely admire people who, because the thing is, like, if people don't like him because he does that, he probably doesn't care. And that's also kind of refreshing,
ScotsCare, helping to break the cycle of deprivation for Scots in London.
Can we go back and talk about social media? Because I was looking at your social media presence, your Twitter feed, and going back to what we were talking about earlier, you do have a beautifully gentle style on there, and you also nail the Scottish accent phenomenally.
Thank you.
There's a few of them which I was just thinking, oh, they were killing me. The stuff about the distillery. And
Craig the tour guide.
The Stirling Castle. It's just beautiful stuff. And if anyone's listening to this, go and look at it because it's great. But your views are through the roof. The last time I looked at the distillery one, it was 2.3 million views.
Yeah, that one really took off. I think probably because it's quite a familiar concept. I think it's quite. I think Americans were really into it. I think they've all been on distillery tours, so they could they knew what was happening. But yeah, it's been kind of crazy. It all started in lockdown when I was bored and not obviously working live, so trying to keep creative, and just started doing what I thought was funny, basically on Twitter, and it blew up, and it's quite cool and kind of strange to see how attached people can get to that character specifically.
Yes, lovely. And how hard do you have to work at getting the numbers? Is that something separate that do you have a kind of like personal marketing plan to push the numbers up?
Oh, I don't think I'm savvy enough for that, but I do. I mean, with that kind of thing, you can kind of never tell what's going to do well and what isn't. But I do try and post regularly because I think it's people like when you're consistent, so they know they can come back and watch more. But yeah, I mean, I don't have any secret formula. I think it's just a mixture of good luck, and sometimes you get retweeted by people who have a big following, and that's really cool, and that means more people will see it. But yeah, just as long as people enjoy it, really.
And we were talking about how social media can be a real double-edged sword. Are you able to, and people tend to lose their minds a little on social media. Are you able to keep that at arm's length from anyone who criticizes you, or do you take these things personally, or do you just not read them?
Well, it really depends what people say. I think some stuff doesn't bother me because it's kind of like, I don't think it's true, or I just, it's not something that touches a nerve. But I think, there's that old saying of like, never take criticism from someone you wouldn't take advice from, or whatever it was. So yeah, I mean, when people are just deliberately nasty, that's kind of like, that's almost more hurtful in a way because they've set out to upset you. But it should also be less hurtful because they're just they're obviously unhappy. I try my best to not get too caught up in it because you can absolutely live online, and it's very easy to get caught up in it. But I'm trying my best not to, because I think ultimately I just want to do what I do, and people will enjoy it or they won't enjoy it, and that's cool. I do think it's odd when people feel the need to comment stuff sometimes, because I think I've never been, I've never watched a video that I didn't enjoy and thought I should tell them that, I've just kind of left it. So
yes, my mother used to say that to me. If you can't say anything nice, don't say anything at all.
That's it, yeah. And it's I think that's an adage I live by. So yeah, it's not been too bad. It's more weird when just knowing that people are aware of you is quite weird, because obviously I'm pretty completely unknown, and now I've got a bit of a profile, and that's quite weird, like knowing that.
I read that you've got a master's in screenwriting, and I was wondering do you watch television and become dismayed by it?
I haven't watched a lot of terrestrial TV in a while because I haven't had one. But I just got back to my parents and I've been watching TV, and I've remembered all that stuff that, daytime TV and insurance adverts and things I've completely forgotten existed. I don't think I despair. I think I enjoy a lot of stuff. I think I feel quite a lot of pressure to watch a lot of. There's so much out there now that you can never really catch up with everything, and that's quite stressful. So there's a lot of great comedy and drama that I just haven't seen yet because I don't have time, and that is kind of a shame because that should be my job. Should be watching as much as possible.
But it is tough. I get that, and I just wonder whether with a master's in screenwriting, and I know you're so busy, but do you see at one point? Do you fancy writing a drama or writing a movie? Can you see you doing something like that?
No, absolutely. I mean, it's one of those things that kind of one day sort of idea might happen, but I mean, I know I've written a couple of sitcom pilots and things, and the way these things work is it's difficult to get stuff made, but yeah, I'd love to do that one day. I think right now I'm kind of focused more on comedy and live comedy, but yeah, it feels like something I'd have to really sit down and concentrate on, which I'm quite bad at.
Oh yeah. And what about Edinburgh this year? Will you be playing Edinburgh?
I will. Yeah, I'm doing a run of my stand-up show, Eleanor Morton Has Peaked, which is on every day apart from Tuesdays at Monkey Barrel at 12:40, and I'm doing Craig the tour guide. I'm doing a one-off show on the 15th at the Stand of him, which is the first time I've done anything of that live, so it's going to be interesting. And I've kind of set myself up for trouble because I've realised I now have to write 2 shows. I have to write 2 hours.
Wow.
Yeah, so
that's a lot of time to fill.
Yeah, but hopefully it should be all right. I'm hoping Craig will have some fans in, so they'll be excited to see him, and that'll cover any patches. But I'm doing my best.
For anyone who's not seen your Twitter feed, where, if they're listening now, where can they actually go to?
I am at Eleanor Morton on Twitter, but it's also all on YouTube and Instagram and TikTok. Also just Eleanor Morton. So if you put my name into any of those, I think I should show up. If you can't be bothered, scrolling through my Twitter, it's all on YouTube, so that's a bit easier.
Thank you very much for chatting to us.
Thank you.
Okay.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
ScotsCare, supporting London Scots with financial grants, welfare advice, counselling, sheltered housing, jobs coaching and family support.